right, I'm going to kick us off. As you're coming in, let us know how things are where you're at. It's finally feeling like fall here in Colorado, and the leaves are turning, so I'm ready for a little bit of seasonality change. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Megan Raymond. I'm the Senior Director of Membership and Programs here at WCET. As we go through the conversation today, make sure to enter your questions into the question box. If you enter them in chat, there's a chance we will lose them, but we do hope that you actively participate in the chat. You can download this link to the slides, and then we will share a link to the recording. We'll compile resources and share those out next week. Take a moment to review our accessibility commitment, and do let us know if we can accommodate you in any way. Today's webcast is WOW Case Study, How Technology is Transforming Access and Completion. And if you don't know, WOW stands for WCET Outstanding Work. And one of our WOW Award winners is on the call today. This webinar is hosted in partnership with Parchment. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our esteemed moderator today. Please welcome Matt.
I've never been called esteemed before, Megan, but thank you so much. And we are very excited for today's conversation. We've got two phenomenal guests with us, Christina and Marina, who we'll meet in just a little bit. So we'll do some introductions, let everybody know who's going to be leading the conversation today. And we're talking about the phenomenal work that the California Community College System and the California Virtual Campus are doing with course sharing. So we'll do an overview of what course sharing is. We'll hear more about the CVC story. And then we'll hear from Christina on the institutional perspective. Course sharing is often viewed as a system-wide thing. But what are the actual benefits when you drill down to the institutions that are participating in course sharing? And then how does this ultimately deliver a unified student experience? Because that's what we're here for. How do we actually improve the pathways that learners take so that they can advance to their next educational professional opportunity? So why does this actually matter for students? We'll talk about the efficiency, the operational benefits of course sharing, but why is this an impact for students? And then of course, throughout the webinar, we hope that you'll put your questions in the Q&A box. So I see a lot of people are using the chat, which is fantastic. Let us know who you are, what your role is, and certainly connect with each other that way. But if you have any questions for Christina or Marina throughout the webinar, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We'll stop periodically and answer some of those. We'll certainly reserve time at the end for Q&A, but we want this to be informal. We want this to be a conversation. So please do not hesitate whatsoever to put your questions in, and we'll make sure to get to as many of those as we possibly can. So a quick introduction for myself. I'm Matt Sternberg. I'm the Director of Customer Advocacy. Came over with the Parchment acquisition, now at Instructure. So my whole career has really been about credentialing and learner pathways and how do we improve those things. I'm based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Have met many of you. I see many familiar faces in the chat and looking forward to moderating today's conversation. But Marina, please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marina Aminy. I'm the Executive Director for the California Virtual Campus, and we support the 116 colleges in the California Community College System. And before I hand it over to Christina to introduce herself, I'm just going to say I'm so excited to be on this webinar with Christina. She and I are co-conspirators. We were faculty together back in the day, administrators, deans in the trenches, and I'm so excited to be here today with her.
Thank you, Marina. I am also thrilled to be here today. And as we heard earlier, we have our esteemed moderator, Matt. Matt, it's being recorded and like 78 people heard that, so it must be true. So Marina is exceptional. A lot of the push behind the success that the California community colleges are experiencing is because of her leadership. So I am just as thrilled, I think, as all of you to hear kind of the work that she's done and see kind of the outline from a big picture of everything she's accomplished. So I'm in great company with an esteemed moderator and Dr. Aminy. So thank you all. Thanks for letting me be here today.
And we'll hear a lot more about what course sharing is, how they've implemented it, and the impacts. But I wanted to point to a few data points. We recently did a survey with students and former students to talk about course availability. So if we can advance the slide to the data points. We did a survey just to get an idea of what are the challenges with course availability on the learner experience. And so here are some of our findings, and we'll have an upcoming white paper on this. Actually kind of staggering when you think about it. And I've actually seen a lot of articles come out on this topic recently. So I think this conversation is really timely. 85% of learners were impacted by course availability due to capacity or scheduling conflicts. Meaning, and we all had this experience in college too, right? Where we're like, all right, I really hope I get into this course at this time so that I can continue on my educational pathway. But for a lot of people, that's not the case, right? They're not getting into the course that they need. And if you're planning on transferring to a 4-year next semester, that could really impact your experience. 53% of students took courses at another institution to stay on track. I did that when I was a student. I took summer courses at community college just to make sure I could stay on track, right? So students are doing this already. They're having to kind of piece together their educational pathway in order to get the credential that they want or get to the destination that they want. And 72% of learners said limited course availability likely increased their time and cost to a degree. Higher education is very expensive. There's a lot of reasons to stop, right? There's a retention problem in higher ed. How can we make it really easy for people to say yes, to continue, and remove some of those barriers that prevent students from persisting? So really interesting data points that we highlighted and we'll be highlighting in our white paper. So that's just to set the table of kind of the problem statement. But Marina, I'll pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit more. What is course sharing actually?
All right. Well, I love setting up this whole conversation around the need for students, right? Students are not finding the classes they need in many cases, and they're not progressing in a timely manner toward their educational goals. So right now, on the left side of the column there, we have this very lengthy analog process, right? Where a student who can't find a class has to actually fill out an application for another institution. They have to wait for admission. If they're admitted to that secondary institution, they have to wait for provisioning or studentization is what we call it. That means getting an email, getting an ID number, sometimes waiting for an orientation or other requirements. And then there's a wait time and a lag time. And if at the end of that, process, that class is still available and you haven't lost that student, then they can enroll in the class. That is a very unfriendly process for a student who already is struggling because they can't find the class they need in their home institution. So course sharing is when 2 or more institutions get together and they share their resources to make more courses and more programming available to students. And so on the right side, you kind of think about a new way to handle the student who's struggling for a class with no additional application. So currently in the California community colleges, which I'll recap later, we don't require any additional application process. No additional login. We've already got all their information, right? No provisioning, no new email address or ID number, no new matriculation process where they're sitting in a queue or waiting to talk to somebody, and then an instant enrollment into that new class. And if you compare these two processes, it's stark in terms of how friendly and helpful it is to the student. So that's kind of the general definition when we say course sharing, what we're talking about. Let's go to that next slide. So already you heard from Matt about the benefits to students, right? The study that he shared from the white paper, I believe, surveyed over 1,000 students, and they're struggling to find their classes. And so obviously the benefits to students are primary, right? They've got access to that bigger portfolio of classes. Obviously, they can finish their classes, complete their ed goals more in a more timely manner, and they have a unified experience. There's no waiting in a queue and having multiple logins and IDs and so forth. What we didn't talk a lot about yet is the benefit to institutions. On the flip side of that, if you did a quick survey, you would find that institutions are discontinuing programs, canceling classes, There's program revitalization, which we kind of call it, but it really means that our classes are not filling, programs are not being completed by enough students, and doors are closing on programs, and in some cases, entire colleges because of under-enrollment. So the benefit to institutions to share courses across a portfolio is that they get more enrollments and fewer canceled classes. And you'll hear more from Christina and her successes managing some of this at her college. And then also the creation of fully online pathways. In some cases, I know many of you are from smaller rural systems or colleges or organizations where you just don't have the ability to be everything to everyone. And so you're able to offer a portion of your classes toward a fully online degree or certificate. And so why don't we rely on our partner colleges to provide the rest of that if we can't do all of it? And then also there's a huge benefit to data and reporting for enrollment management. In the past, in our system, if you lost 100 students, it was kind of a black hole. You didn't really know why you lost them. With our current dashboard, you're able to go in and know exactly where the student went, where they took the class, and what those courses were. So if I can turn around and tell Christina, hey, you lost 100 students to fully online Spanish classes this year. That's useful information for Christina as a dean or her VP, at her district to then turn around and change her enrollments to add more classes to keep her students and retain them and meet their needs. Let's go to that next slide. All right, so the impact of course sharing with CVC, just a few quick slides to tell you the history of where it came from. As I mentioned, let's go to that next slide, please. The California Virtual Campus has been around for over 10 years, and it really came about with our system saying, wow, we've got 116 colleges, we serve over 2 million students. I think we're at 2.2 million this year. It would be nice for us to come up with an initiative to support online education. And so it began in 2013. We were called the Online Education Initiative. And it began with adopting a common learning management system because we were on a bunch of disparate systems. And we began by all of us congregating around Canvas. We did an RFP. We had students on the selection committee. And then with that, we created this online ecosystem and we started talking about course sharing in around 2015-16. Assembly Bill 637 formally authorized cross-enrollment and recognized it legislatively, which was a very powerful move in California that then allowed us to sort of make it happen under certain circumstances. We were able to pull financial aid because of that. And from there, our system has awarded grants to the CVC through a local district. And we have been supporting the system with course sharing. And we adopted the Parchment platform, which previously was run by Quotely and is now Instructure, a lot of acquisitions. But it's really the Parchment platform that allows for that interface for the students to find their classes and enroll in it, in addition to some partnership with other vendors for middleware. So that's kind of our goal. And if you see Vision 2030, which is our chancellor's Vision 2030, she would like to see 200,000 enrollments on our course exchange by 2030. So as I mentioned, that's kind of, we're a really large size. I believe we are the largest system of education in the entire nation. And it was always an opt-in process for our course sharing. So we invite colleges and districts to participate. And many of them said no initially. And I was in a district with Christina, and she's going to talk about this in a bit, where they were like, no, we're good. We're not going to participate in course sharing. It's really weird. I'm not sure why we would, open up to all of this. It's a liability for us. So a lot of the change has to kind of take place politically to get people to opt in. And then course sharing also includes this whole ecosystem of technology that has to come together. You're not just sharing courses. What about the transcripts afterward? What about financial aid if a student can't pay for that next class? What about data sharing and so forth? What about access to the learning management system and accessibility and all of the other what ifs that come with it? We have to sort of work through those. Lots of professional development around course quality as well. We have something called Peer Online Course Review, which is a badge that you get for high quality courses, POCR called locally. And we do award for that on our site, and we actually move those courses higher in our algorithm. And also we provide support for Canvas and other educational technologies like online tutoring through the CVC, the California Virtual Campus. We also badge for zero textbook costs on there so that we eliminate another barrier of high textbook costs for students. If they only have one class offered locally and that one class has a $200 textbook, that's a barrier. So now they can come on the CVC and find that same class with a zero textbook cost badge on it. And then, of course, thought leadership, right? Changing the way we think about our students, changing the way we share resources and collaborate. That's a lot of the work that we do here at CVC too.
Marina, we've got a great question
Yes.
in the Q&A. Someone's wondering, I'm wondering how CVC is structured to allow this kind of course sharing. So, just every state has a different governance model around, the autonomy that the higher ed institutions have, the agreements they have with each other, and then there's, the state university system, the community college system, the Department of Ed. There's a lot of different flavors. I know you have a lot of experience, talking with other states as well. What are the different ways you've seen states structured, and just set the table for us? What should people be thinking about in terms of their state structure?
That's a great question. Like, how do you even start, right? Some states have a legislative mandate, like we did with Assembly Bill 637, but you don't need it in order to have course sharing. I think what's at the core of every course sharing is an agreement. We call ours the Master Consortium Agreement, but I'm trying to get away from anything with the word master in it. So now I'm just calling it the Consortium Agreement. And that really enables reciprocity of processes, accepting courses, accepting financial aid. It's an agreement for data sharing and enabling access. So there has to be a consortium agreement, I think, in place with colleges and institutions opting in. And you're welcome to find ours. It's on cvc.edu and use it as a model. It's a little bit dated, but it's got all of the features that you would need. So really, parties have to get together and agree and have some kind of understanding. You don't need a legislative mandate for it in most cases, but I would check your local state laws for that. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And then here, this slide kind of shows you where we've been. I joined CVC in 2021, early in 2021, and we actually had like 16 teaching colleges 4 years ago. And it was pretty demoralizing because out of 116, only 16 colleges had opted in. That has changed. We are now looking at 78 teaching colleges ending last year. And then this year we're adding another 20. So we're going to have about 100 teaching colleges, which increases the inventory on there for students, which is what we're looking for. And then enrollments, if you look at our enrollments for 21-22, we had about 1,500. And I joke that at least 100 of them were CVC staff because we just wanted to make sure that it was working. To go from 1,500 to what we ended with last year of more than 33,000 enrollments is pretty phenomenal. And it's all been very organic. There's like TikToks and Reddit threads where students are sharing, like, hey, did you know you can go find classes at other institutions? Like, not fill out an application. It's really cool. Yeah, it is cool. And so getting this resource into the hands of students has been really important. Last year, we had more than 100,000 fully online courses available on the exchange for students to take in our system. More than 2/3 of them were badged for high course quality or POCR, as I mentioned earlier, and or zero textbook costs. And our winner of the most cross enrollments from any college was Christina's college, Saddleback College. They earned about 3,400 enrollments. And again, if you think about the revenue that they're getting, they're raking it in. It's great. It's great for the college. It's great for the students as well. And then several other districts had pretty high numbers as well. Let's go to that next slide, please. I'm going to hand it over to Christina now to talk a bit about what course sharing has meant to the colleges. Because I think from my perspective, I'm an evangelist of course sharing, but what does that actually mean in practice when you are a dean like her in the largest division of her entire district, her multi-college district? So Christina, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Marina. So our transition has been a little bit tough, a little bit challenging. I think Marina alluded to kind of some of the road bumps that we ran into first. I was the director of tutoring, and Marina and I worked over there together And I was so excited. We were going to do online tutoring and we were going to get everything ready and we were going to support online courses. And we have faculty who are very vocal and who had concerns and legitimate concerns. And then I became dean, which is like 9 years ago at this point. And if we could go to the next slide, I'll talk about a little bit of some of the issues we ran into. So from my perspective, some key pieces, because I am not the technology lady. Like humanities and social sciences, give me those conversations all day long, give me personnel issues all day long, but the tech back end is not me. So from the faculty kind of that point of view, there were faculty who were very concerned that there was going to be this idea of race to the bottom, where we would lose so many students and they would be taking classes across the state that didn't have the rigor that we had, and we were going to be punished for that. And so really kind of having those hard conversations and talking to them and asking, I have a lot of leaders in my area. So I have currently the head of our academic senate, our president, our past president for academic senate, our lead negotiator for the faculty association, two of the 3 grievance chairs for the whole district. So I've got people with opinions and strong opinions, and I love that because they'll tell me and we'll have difficult and challenging conversations. So one of the concerns was when I first became dean that a department had been punished because the dean had asked them to add online classes and those classes didn't fill as well. And as a result, what occurred was they were then given less classes in the future because their productivity wasn't great. So I said, what do you need me to do in order for you to know that I will not do that to you? I will not punish you for that. So I had to write a letter on Saddleback College letterhead that said, this department will not be punished for their productivity if they add 2 more online classes, I promise. And I signed it, and it's now sitting on the door of that faculty member's office, like out there, 7 years later, as that commitment. So making sure that the personnel, that the people that are going to be impacted, the faculty, that they feel good about it, and figuring out what it is that they don't feel good about and figuring out why, and seeing how you can address those concerns with a letter on letterhead or with data, or with some other thing that can really help support and get them on board with seeing that this isn't now just a butts in seats situation. Sorry, can I say butts in seats on a professional webinar like this? Like, we're no longer talking about students in that capacity. We're talking about students and their journey, their academic journey for completion. Like, if I don't have what they need, I have to be able to figure out how to get that to them, right? And sometimes that means going to a different college, having a different experience. And so I think we have an obligation in the California community college system to do that. So personnel was the biggest issue that we had to address and that we had to face, at least on my end. And so that's what I did. And that took a little bit of time. But as the faculty started seeing that they would not be punished and that there wasn't this race to the bottom reality, and that our students could benefit from it, and that their specialty courses could benefit from it, we got more and more buy-in, and finally kind of we got to that spot and we're there. Another key piece, let's go to the next slide because I can talk about these more in person. So again, who are your key players? Do you have a vocal senate? Do you have a faculty association who's going to support or not support this? Are people politically connected? And what does that look like for you? And what does that look like for this journey? And then your implementation team, and making sure that they are on board and that they have the staff that they need, or at least the bandwidth to support it. In this case, Marina was a huge driver when she was here as the dean of our online ed area. We also needed to make sure that our financial aid team was on board, admissions and records, because a lot of the back end tech stuff has to do with them. And then I think from a faculty perspective and from a student success perspective, do you have folks that are ready for this? Because you're going to get an influx of students potentially, and have your faculty, do they know best practices? Are they being compensated for these best practices? Do they go through training? What does that training look like? So this is the different type of training that we have offered at the college, that we use various funding sources to support. So peer online course review is an outline that the state academic senate has said, this is a best practice as it relates to online courses. And so our faculty can receive compensation depending on what areas they're in for going through that process. ZTC, we know, the push for online open educational resources to reduce those costs. And then ADA training as well. That's super important as it relates to accessibility for our students. And online tutoring is also important because in our system, if we have online tutoring, if our faculty use ZTC, how the system works is that their class gets, rated or weighted up higher in the search. So all of those things are really key components in making sure that your college is ready or your college is on the path to getting ready for that. So next slide. So our school, we're in the middle of a cis transition, which is the most painful thing I've ever been through. And I've had 2 children, so I don't say any of that lightly. So our numbers aren't as great as they were last spring. They will get there again, but we had about 800 enrollments, 700 and something enrollments last spring from the CVC, which is fantastic. Our highest number of enrollments as of last week, ethnic studies, we have students taking ethnic studies courses throughout the state with us. That's about 71. You can read the rest of them. Honestly, we see a lot more 5 to 10 enrollments per section. So you're thinking like, well, Christina, that's not a lot, 5 to 10. 5 to 10 enrollments saves classes and saves programs. And I'm going to give you examples on the right-hand side here. The most impactful enrollments are language programs. We have a very robust language program. We have 11 languages that we offer. Recently, our partners at the CSUs and UCs suggested that students who are transferring don't actually need to hit a language requirement to transfer, just to graduate. So our enrollments for languages, we're starting to dip down. And I have full-time faculty in that program. And when I took over that area, we were talking about what things were going to look like if we had to lay off people. And those were gut-wrenching conversations to have. However, what we've been able to do is we've been able to turn things around with the help of dual enrollment and with the help of the CVC, with the help of the consortium. So this semester alone, right? German 1 has 5 enrollments. That's the difference between me canceling German 1 and me not canceling German 1. Italian 1 has 4 enrollments. That's the difference between me canceling Italian 1 and me offering Italian 1. So these are small numbers, and you're like, well, that's not crazy. It is crazy. It actually means that these programs can continue because my funnel, right, when we talk about enrollment management, my funnel at the beginning can be larger. So I can look at what that looks like and create that with the support of the CVC. And then sociology and psychology, smaller, but also those are areas that I was having difficult conversations around 3 years ago. And things have changed with now not only with the CVC, other initiatives, but this is a big one for us.
Christina, you highlighted the funnel piece. I want you to talk more about, like, it allows you to plan further in the future, right? Like, what courses are you going to be potentially offering based on your 101s? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so I have 2 sections of German 1, right? And if I have 2 sections of German 1, that means that I can offer German 2 in the spring. If I don't have 2 sections of German 1, I'm not offering German 2 in the spring. Same with Spanish, same with some of these other areas, right? So if I need 4 sections of, let's just say, Arabic, right? Which I do. I need 4 sections of Arabic 1 in order for me to offer Arabic 4, okay? In order for you to get a degree in Arabic, you have to take Arabic 4. So if I can't offer 4 sections of Arabic because my funnel needs to be, I lose 50% of students at every transition, right? So 50% from Arabic 1 to Arabic 2. 50% from Arabic 2 to Arabic 3 and 4. We have a combined class for 3 and 4. If my funnel isn't big enough in the beginning, I can't get to that completion at the end, which means that program dies. So when we talk about, German 1, 2 years ago, I was talking about canceling the German program generally, German 1 and German 2, just removing it because we didn't have enough enrollments. Making sure that we have that funnel that's big enough in the beginning so that then I can plan to make sure I'm now keeping German 2 on the schedule for spring. If we didn't have these enrollments, I had to cancel that class, we wouldn't be. So completion for students, but also completion for programs. So I now have faculty who will be able to continue to be faculty here because we're able to have that funnel so big at the beginning and for it to continue for students. And languages has benefited greatly from this reality. So I'm grateful for that, and I know our faculty are grateful. And our students have exposure to things that they normally wouldn't. Students across the state of California now have exposure to things that they normally wouldn't. So it's great for that piece.
I think that's a really helpful framing, right? And I think that's an amazing sell to faculty of why they should care and want this. I want to quickly stop and ask a few questions. Marina, you answered some of these, but I want to make sure everyone sees them and get them out here verbally as well. Matt asked a great question. Do you worry about curriculum gaps or alignment issues? Basically, are students going to sign up and register for the right class? Like, are we just opening up the Wild West where students get to pick and choose anything and might have kind of wasted credits, or they're in a class that they shouldn't be, something's too advanced? Tell us a little bit more about how you navigate that.
Yeah, this is sort of another soapbox or even another webinar, but I personally believe strongly in less choreography of students and less controlling them. We often put too many controls on students and control their behaviors, when actually if we give them just enough guidance or just in time guidance, they can find their way to the information they need. In our case, we do have lots of disclaimers throughout that students should consult a counselor and check with their kind of local guidance on their programs to ensure they're taking the right class. But later on in a little bit, I'm going to share some screenshots of the student journey. We actually have an API, which is like a piece of middleware that pulls information in for the student. And we have a site called assist.org that helps students with that articulation and crosswalking of courses. And we pull that information at the point of enrollment to help the student decide if that works for them.
And then you highlighted a little bit about just the organic growth of this. Can you share, other advice you have for how do you grow programs? How are students finding it? Your interactions with
Patience,
counselors?
patience. I think my first year when I started, they asked me like, what's one of your goals for the CVC? And I was like, I don't know. I like to see 5,000 enrollments because we had 1,500 at that time. And people kind of laughed at me a little bit. We're like, well, aren't you ambitious? And it just takes a lot of patience and time. You talk about Saddleback College. I used to work at Saddleback with Christina. There was an incredible resistance to CVC. There was a lack of understanding. There's a lot of myths and rumors around it. And so you have to be calm. You have to continue to come to the table to help people understand what you're doing. You have to be honest and transparent. You have to share information readily and data readily, and you have to be willing to dispel those rumors and misunderstandings over and over again so that people see the resource for the asset that it truly is. And then once that clicks, what you'll find is that your allies are in the field now and they are pushing it locally at their own districts and their own colleges because they're like, wow, this is a gold mine of support for students and for the institution.
One more question, and then we'll continue with the slides. But Shannon asks, does the system then depend on each college having somewhat complementary offerings? In other words, specializing in different topical areas. So for instance, at Saddleback, we've got German, how do you create the right classes being available? Are colleges competing with each other on the exchange for the same types of classes?
I'll let Christina answer that one. Because Christina comes from a multi-college district. So even in your own district, you've got two colleges with real different flavors, right?
Completely. Honestly, so we were not strategic in it. It was organic. It is organic as of right now. If we were to be strategic, it probably would be better, but we're not. And so what happens is we all have bottlenecks. We all have places where students are not getting through. That's a reality. So how do we, first of all, acknowledge that because you have to. How do you get to a spot where you can make sure that there are different opportunities for different students? I think Marina's comment about you don't have to be everything to everyone. That's the model that we used to, I think, that we used to have to think of. There are multiple things that each college offers us, that each college offers our students. And because it's been organic, students have been able to find that. I have not seen, people were so against it and thought we were going to lose so many students. It was going to be such a nightmare. The people that Marina is talking about that were so adamant against it, the CVC has saved many of their specialty classes. We have faculty who teach American government for 30 years, right? But having their specialty poli-sci 12 course, I can't continue to offer that if that's at 15 students. But if I put it online and if I make it available for the whole state of California, that course is going to be at 30 or 32. It's just going to happen. And so if you find places and niches where your students have a backlog and you can't meet that, but you also have realities where you have faculty who are super passionate about something that they're doing, and now that they have access to the whole state, like students find that there's going to be a need. That's just the way that our system currently works, which is kind of great because we have this opportunity. I don't think that answers it fully, but that's the best that I could
No,
do.
but I think you're kind of getting at the fact too that we have a gigantic system, and that's one of the huge assets that we just have. We have with 116 colleges, you're going to have the colleges that focus on STEM and transfer, the ones that focus on CTE, career workforce training, the ones that focus on non-credit. We have different flavors throughout the state, and that becomes naturally complementary. But if people want to use it more strategically, the Parchment platform does offer a rich data source that they can kind of go and mine for information. For example, we'll update a top searches, report. You can go and, we have tens of thousands of students on the site every month. And so you can actually go and be like, oh, it looks like this month American Sign Language was hot. This is something online American Sign Language is a hot trend this month. We might want to go back and look at our own offerings to see if we're meeting need. Looks like people are looking for this class. That's the sort of information that can be really useful.
I don't subscribe to the idea that our pie is limited. If we reduce, we're in the business of higher education. If we reduce the barriers of higher education and make higher education easier in the places where it should be. I'm not talking about dumbing down your courses. If we make it easier with the structures, with the technology, with the barriers that have traditionally impacted folks who we want to impact least, that pie gets bigger. And so everyone benefits. This is not I don't think this is a situation where the pie is so limited. At least that's not what I philosophically believe. I believe if you make that pie easier to access, that pie is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be easier for students. So I think it's part of our duty when we're in this, right, to recognize that if we want equality of opportunity, we have to reduce those barriers. And this is one way that you can reduce those barriers for your students in systems, whatever, if they're large like California or if it's not.
All right, well, keep the questions coming. These are great questions. But yeah, I think we should continue.
All right. So this is I think the next few slides will give you an idea of what the student experience looks like, because you've kind of heard about it, system-wide and then college and a local college example. But the student really, we talk about course sharing, but as I mentioned earlier, you're also talking about a seamless class enrollment process. From beginning to end, when a student goes to cvc.edu, that's our site, the goal is that they are in the class within about a minute and a half. And that is usually accomplished. If a student is qualified and they're supposed to be where they're going, they are in the class. They're not in a wait list. They're not waiting in a queue. They're in the class within about 1.5 to 2 minutes max, which is really exciting. And then we also take care of automated transcripts in the back end. And we also help them to combine their financial aid and make a request to their home college to make that more portable for them to that new college. The next couple screens are going to have screenshots. So let's go to that next slide. And so we've got, this is the landing page when they go. The first thing a student does, go ahead and click on that next couple of boxes there, is they select their home college. In this case, maybe they picked Barstow Community College, which again is a more rural college, maybe fewer offerings for the student. Then they do a search by. In our case, maybe the student wants to go to a Cal State University, which is our 4-year system. They select that. And then in that third box, they select the requirement that they're trying to meet. Maybe in this case, oral communication. We can also select written or math as well. And then they just do find classes. Next couple clicks, please. And then the next slide. And then they get to this landing page. They get a bunch of results. Sometimes there's 10, like right now, there's not going to be a ton because it's already September. But if this student is searching in June or July, there might be hundreds of classes that show up in their search. And so then they can select on that left side, they can select between synchronous, asynchronous, term start date. And then you see there, it's also badged on that right side for quality review, which is our peer online course review quality process, and then zero textbook costs as well. Christina, anything to add about these couple of student pages?
Just think that each college has a strength, especially as it relates to online post-COVID. And I think the key feature is like focus on that strength. So in this case, you see ZTC, you see quality reviewed. colleges have those things accomplished, have those things done. And so to dig down and to make sure that you're honoring that. Do you offer second 8-week classes? And people don't usually have those. Do you offer first week out? When does your term start? Like, those are all things that can be utilized. They don't even have to be strengths. They can be utilized because other institutions do things differently. So there's going to be benefits here for lots of different realities, lots of different reasons. It doesn't have to be that you have the best online comm course. It can be, do you have classes that start 10/20? Because there's a ton of students that are going to need those classes. And if so, that's an automatic strength that will show up here and you'll benefit from.
And I just want to give a quick shout out to Christina. She does this part really, really well. She doesn't have all her classes starting in August, like the majority of our institutions. She is the queen of like a good late start class. She'll be like, "Oh, it looks like, we're not meeting need with our August starting classes. Let me start a bunch of classes in October and see how those goes. Let me do some late start that are like 12-week classes instead of 16-week classes." She's great about monitoring enrollments, looking at what's needed, and then knowing full well that if she adds a class, it's not going to fill with the local zip code. And that's a scary thought, right? Because she's like giving people jobs and she doesn't want to cancel their classes. They lose benefits, etc., especially our part-time staff and faculty. So she knows though from her experience that if she adds these classes, they will fill with people on the CVC, right? With students outside of her zip code. And she kind of has faith in that based on the experience that she's seen, and she can fill those classes. So that's sort of using that enrollment management to your benefit. Let's go to that next slide because I think we had a Q&A on this one. So the student just picked a class at Santa Ana College, right? This was a Barstow student, Barstow College student looking for this class, and they found it at Santa Ana College. This slide pulled information about transfer for the student and was like, hey, this class is called this at your college, and it counts for this requirement, and here's the articulation information. And then, you should still talk to a counselor if you have questions. So this information helps to pull it all together for the student. And again, it's not there to replace a human counselor, but it's there to kind of provide some additional guidance. And then let's go to that. And then here, this is the live seat count. So we can just skip this one and go to the next one, please. This is my favorite part. This is one of the main reasons why our system selected Instructure as our LMS. Has anyone heard of the trust, the Canvas trust? What that means is you can tie together two different instances of the learning management system. And so what happens is that Barstow student that just took the Santa Ana class, they don't have to leave the Barstow Canvas and go log into the Santa Ana Canvas. The trust helps to combine all of that so they never leave their home instance. And all of those classes at the other colleges show up on the home instance. So that's the cool part. It looks like someone lost my audio. Did anyone else lose my audio? Okay, all right.
I can still hear you.
Okay, good. Someone in chat said that maybe it's theirs. Okay, so the Canvas Trust is kind of a really big deal, and it ties. This thing is Instructure owns our platform. They also own the Canvas Trust. So there's that relationship, and there's that problem solving and that interoperability, which is really unique and helpful. I don't know, Christina, have your folks ever struggled with this? Sometimes I don't know if there's a technical glitch or
No
if
one
there's
has ever
concerns around it.
with this. And I think going back to kind of the tech piece, that's outside of my world, but what I do know is that it's seamless and that it's flawless. And I have yet to receive a complaint from students or faculty about that reality. Students pop up in the Canvas shell, they're taking the courses. Students on our end never complain. So it is one of the few things that I do not receive complaints on. And the back end technology is, in this case, it's priceless to us because it allows a completely seamless experience for our students, which is needed if you're going to do this. This is a complex reality, right? Like, I'm getting overwhelmed hearing you, Marina, but so I've been through it. Don't get overwhelmed. It's, you're going to have to start somewhere. And I will say that about 3 years ago, I think Marina and I, at least I was, and I think she was too, at a spot where we were like, wow, this is intense. Is this going to work? Is this going to happen? And here we are, she's at 30,000 plus enrollments, and we have classes that are being saved and programs that are being saved because of it. So don't be overwhelmed. I promise. It's okay. You got to start somewhere.
And also that's normal. It's the normal part of the process, is being overwhelmed is just how everybody starts in this thing. All right, I think that was the last slide on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue for some tips for getting started if we want to go to the next slide. I think we highlighted the different ways that states and systems are structured, and you talk with a lot of people, Marina, they're like, this sounds amazing, but man, that seems like a lot of work. And obviously, it's not as easy as we've made it sound, or that you've made it sound. It's a ton of hard work, but it is possible. So how should people get started?
Yeah, you're gonna have a few tips on here. I'm gonna cover this first one because I think it's very important conceptually, is course sharing is there to serve students. And you're gonna have to make a bunch of decisions along the way about how you structure course sharing, what you restrict, what you allow. We really at the CVC and in our system, I think, do a good job of saying what's the best for the student. And sometimes the institution doesn't like it. Okay, so for example, we show the number of units when a student is looking at the list of classes that they found in their search. It'll be like, oh, Saddleback offers it for 3 units, Barstow offers it for 4 units. I'm going to take it for 3 because I'm paying less tuition, right? Institutions don't like that. They would like to force the student into a class that kind of suits their enrollment needs, but it's really good for the student to take the fewer units because it's the same darn class and it transfers and it just happens to be a unit less, right? So that's what I mean. There's going to be decisions that you're going to make that are not going to be institution centered, that are going to be student centered, ideally. And sometimes institutions have to be kind of worked with to bring them along to remember that the student is the North Star in terms of how you build your system.
Marina,
And
I'm
then,
going to interrupt you here real quickly. Having Marina help with that, because Marina always is so student focused and will ask those hard questions. Having someone at the center to be able to kind of remind you to do that, remind you what your North Star is, to remember to change the perspective of students as one or two in the class to the completion journey for the student. Having someone to do that is so powerful, and it can be very helpful when you're going to get off track, you're going to get off task, it's going to be a little bit challenging. And I'm so grateful that our system has recognized Marina as someone who does that, because you really do need to make sure that local politics or things of that nature are considered and honored and taken care of, but that at the end of the day, we still focus back on the student completion reality.
and then Christina, I'm going to hand over several of the other tips and insights because you've been just phenomenal in getting your college on board to utilize the exchange.
Sure. So exploring options to remove barriers for your students. So I think honestly, this piece has more to do with the technology reality. So getting faculty to recognize that they can benefit from this, that is one piece. Making sure that students have the opportunity to do this seamlessly. We saw the last slide with the LMS, the Canvas shell being right there in their home LMS. That is essential. So these barriers, the technology barrier, the barrier if faculty are concerned about what this means for their program, talking about those barriers first and then addressing them, I think are key. Marina also mentioned, for example, unit issues or ZTC if faculty are not wanting to go to OERs, online educational resources. Those are conversations that should be had and that need to be discussed, because students are going to shop around and they're going to find a way to make it happen. And they're going to gravitate towards those realities. So having those conversations regarding removing those barriers, I think, is essential. Next point. Identifying opportunities to combine low enrollment programs. So as I gave the example with languages, I did not know CVC was going to help save our language program. So if you have an amazing program, if you have 8-week programs, if you have something that is online that is not thriving, really consider this as an option, because if you just open that scope, open that pie and make it available to more people, there's a strong possibility that good things are going to happen for that program. We have support, improve, and grow digital learning catalog. Marina, do you want to talk about that one?
Yes. So, one of the things that I also feel as one of my guiding principles is that online education is more accessible to students and supports more diverse groups of students, such as those with transportation issues. They might be parents, they might have childcare issues, they might have accessibility needs, physical accessibility. And so growing their digital catalog is going to be very, very important. And so what has happened also organically is colleges have been wanting to increase their online programming to offer more classes. And I think that overall is a win, in general for the system. And then also professional development. One area I haven't talked about at all is our professional development wing, which we call CVC at One. We offer thousands of classes, webinars, badges, programming to the system at no cost.
Number 5 relates to academic planning and enrollment management. I am very aggressive with enrollment management. I, as a dean, believe if students are not able to complete classes and complete programs because I'm not offering those classes, that solely rests with me. That is my problem and my problem alone. That's how I impact student success. So the CVC and the increase of enrollments has really allowed me to be more aggressive with what we're offering. So we do offer a lot of second 8-week and late start programs. Now, I do not oversee nursing, so don't come at me, nurses. I'm sorry. I'm not sure we would want accelerated realities there in some cases. However, for humanities and social sciences, there are many colleges throughout the state that are teaching 8-week political science 1. So I'm jumping on that. I'm going to make sure that if we have our classes, if our classes are full for the full semester, that I am offering those second 8-week classes. I am putting them on the schedule, and I'm putting them on the schedule as early as I possibly can when I see that enrollment demand increase. And then that's just a benefit because, more students from the CVC are going to have access and see that, and more students jump in. So it really allows you to be more aggressive. It's allowed me to be more aggressive with enrollment management and making sure that my funnel that I was talking about earlier can be bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and then just to kind of follow up on that last piece, data and analytics, if you are not gaining enrollments initially on the exchange, and like I gave an example earlier, let's say you lost 100 students, you can actually look at the dashboard that we provide and go in and know exactly why you lost 100 students. If they took classes at Saddleback in Spanish or Arabic, that's useful for you to know that your students are looking for Spanish and Arabic. And next term, you could turn around and add some online sections of that. So information is key and information is power, I think, whether you're gaining or not gaining enrollments on the CVC exchange.
So I lost enrollments in econ this semester. I am going to change that. We will not lose enrollments in econ. We lost enrollments in econ because I was not meeting demand. So to Marina's point, it's not all roses and sunshine. We lost. So how can I fix that to make sure that that's not a reality in the future? So it's just more data for you to be able to support your students, support your department, support your programs and your faculty.
I think that's a great summary of everything that folks need to get started. I think it's just start with learners. What problem are you trying to solve? Like, what are the challenges in your system? Like, what have you identified? If you can get people rallying around the challenges and the pains of students, then you can actually move forward. But if you don't synthesize that, people are immediately just going to worry about their program, their courses, or all the reasons not to do it, right? So we highlighted the survey data at the beginning. That's a broad survey, but think about your system. Do we have a retention issue? How do we get students to credential completion? How do we think about transfer in our state? So once you have that data and you identify some of the challenges, then you can rally people around that so that you have, again, that North Star that was highlighted by Christina and Marina. Some more great questions. Go ahead, Marina.
Yeah, I also just want to say Cynthia is one of our, distance education collaborators, co-conspirators in the system, and she's kind of shared an anecdote about how she shares enrollment information with her college locally. And we provide the support and the training and the access that someone like Cynthia would need to promote and support her college.
And we did see a question in there. How is your office funded? I'll just kind of quickly go through. Marina, you typed in, but you're funded by a grant through the chancellor's office. And so anything else to
At this
add
point,
there?
I like to think we're like institutionalized. Grants are like a year long usually, or people think of them as temporarily. We've been around for more than 10 years in the system. And so we are really part of the infrastructure of online education and support for our entire state. And we've been around for a long time. And all of that is entirely funded system-wide through our chancellor's office.
We've got a few more minutes left. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. Someone else on this webinar will be glad that you asked your question. Someone else is sitting there going, I want to ask this, but I'm not sure if I should. So if you ask it, someone else will be glad that you did. One question you probably have is, Matt, do you host a podcast, and has Marina ever been on it talking about course sharing? I'm going to predict that question, and I just put it in the chat, the Credentials Unscripted podcast. I'm sure everyone here likes and subscribes already, but check it out. We talk about credentialing innovation and learner pathways, and had a great conversation with Marina that highlights a lot of what we talked to today, but it's a resource that you can pass along to a colleague or a peer, because part of this is synthesizing, like, how do we get this group of people together to care about these issues? So check that out if you're driving to work and you need something to listen to as well. And then, this is a community of practice too, where people are trying to learn from each other. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. Like, I hesitate to say this, but Marina is always so gracious with her time and with her insight. Christina, I trust that you are the same. Not signing you up for a lot of work, but
With anyone but you, Matt. Yes, I'm very gracious. So yes,
okay. So if anyone
we're good.
has any questions, but reach out, because this is definitely something where we can learn from each other.
Jane said, I wish our administration were more aware of the value of the poker programs. Jane, I don't know if you're part of, I'm guessing you're part of the California Community Colleges. We pushed hard and used different types of funding. So strong workforce funding was used for CTE programs. We had other CTE grants, like braiding funds was very helpful. I think also too, if you show folks that if you go through poker, go through, you're higher on the list. So there is great value. You just keep pushing, Jane, but also, get creative, because we also had people who were not huge fans of poker or didn't understand the value of it as well. And so Marina did a great job of facilitating that push, but just keep going at it.
Another great question. Are you primarily working with community college on course sharing, or are there four-year institutions involved as well? It absolutely can work with 2 years, 4 years. There's no barriers related to that. There's, of course, things that make this process a lot easier, right? Like the consortium agreements. Do you have common course numbering? Do you have, articulations in place that make this really easy? So there's some systems in place that make this even more seamless, but absolutely there's nothing preventing four-year institutions from doing this, and a lot of four-year institutions are exploring this as well. We work with Montana, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, California, obviously. So there's a lot of great examples, and other states are doing this work as well. All right, well, we've got just about 3 minutes here. So I think it's about time to wrap up. Marina, I'm going to give you the last word before we end today's conversation.
Yeah, there's a beautiful poem by a Lebanese poet, Khalil Gibran, and he talks about hold your children, but hold them lightly. That's kind of like they're not your children, they're like the children of the world. And I like to apply that same concept to our students. A lot of times we forget our North Star and we start really controlling students, and we call them our students, and they have to stay in our walls and they have to take our classes. And we feel the need to script and choreograph every bit of that journey for them and force them into options that are not always good for them. So this is a very paternalistic model that I encourage colleges to move away from and really reconsider and re-envision what it could be. And so a more student-centered model allows students to use resources across the system, right? They are students of the world. Let them finish their journey using whatever resources are at their disposal. They can take classes that don't have a textbook cost or fewer units, even if that's not an institution-centered thing that we like. And then also understanding that colleges do some things really well and that we can lean on our partners to fill in those gaps, and giving students options for things like start dates, even instructor choice. I know that's controversial, course quality and textbook costs, and even modalities. So really leaving you with this idea of re-envisioning how you think about your students overall and your role, from less paternalistic to more student-centered and future thinking.
Well, thank you so much, presenters. Thank you, Marina, Christina, and Matt. This was a great conversation, and I know our audience has a lot to mull over and consider. So thank you so much. But at the heart of it is the student. So thank you for reemphasizing that as we close out today. So again, this webinar was recorded. We'll share a link out and include any resources that were shared. And stay tuned for more information at WCET. We will be announcing our November webcast early in October. We have some exciting things to announce coming up. And hopefully you can join us in Denver for our WCET annual conference, which will include ASWE, the annual summit for women in e-learning. So click on that link and learn more about those events. It's going to be a wonderful time in Denver, and we do hope to see you. I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors that underwrite much of what we do here at WCET, as well as our supporting members that invested an additional level to support our ongoing work. Again, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Thank you to our presenters, and we hope to see you soon at a WCET event. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.